Two guys in the dark.
When I was a young child, my mother would tell me that my grandfather had been caught touching my cousin. They told me that I should be careful of him. They told me that he had been caught with his hand up her dress. He said that it was her fault because she was sitting with her legs wide open. That story makes me sick, as it should. But can you imagine how confusing that story would be for me as a little girl? How was I supposed to process that kind of information? Especially when my parents didn't stop taking me there. I remember feeling uncomfortable hearing about it. I remember the way that my mother told me, like it was something really important that I needed to know. I knew it was serious. But I remember being unsure of what I was supposed to do with that kind of information. I had the feeling that I should be scared of him, but I still had to go to my grandparents' house, be polite, do as I was told, and all that other stuff. It was very confusing for me at the time. We are taught not to question such things. I remember as a little girl, as young as 4, maybe 5, sitting right beside him on the couch, snuggled right up to him in the crook of his arm, close enough to smell the booze on his breath, and my mother sitting across the room watching like a hawk. I remember feeling guilty, not knowing why. I remember being scared of getting a spanking or sitting beside him just when he coaxed me over to him. I had no idea how the heck to avoid going to sit beside him. I'd been taught that I had to respect and obey my elders. And although I'd been told to stay away from him, no one rescued me. No one gave me a way to even avoid him. My parents knew he was a drunk and a predator. They knew that he had been caught, and they believed that he did it. Didn't they think to stop me from going over there? Well, obviously not. They didn't want to rock the boat. They didn't want to make any waves and stand up for what was right. Not to mention that my mother was afraid of the wrath of her mother. I'm certain that they didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings by saying that it was not safe for their little girl to be in the presence of a pedophile. I bet they never even called him that. That would be way too much of an accusation. And they couldn't judge, now could they? Although I remember my mother calling him a creepy, dirty old man many times throughout my life. So they protected someone else's feelings, but they were not protecting me. This makes a statement, even to a young kid. Their actions define me as less valuable than my grandmother, and less valuable than my drunken, creepy step-grandfather, the pedophile predator. My feelings, which were mostly confusing, were never been addressed. This is the good illustration of generational dysfunction, especially on my mother-daughter relationship. The truth is that they could have found a way to value both me and my grandmother. My mother could have visited her mother without children in tow. She could have told her mother that she wasn't going to allow my step-grandfather, who was a drunk and had been caught touching my cousin, to have any access to her children. She could have taken a stand against him for the sake of her children, but she didn't. Even more confusing to me is that my mother hated her stepfather. She absolutely hated him. She told me about how afraid of him she always was, about his drunken temper. She hated and feared him, but not enough to protect me from him in any other way except by watching me and warning me, also placing responsibility on me to protect myself. As I got older, my mother continued to tell me this story about my creepy grandfather, the dirty old man, and the sexual trauma that my cousin has suffered. He molested her. He assaulted her. I wonder how my cousin felt about all this. He made an excuse for himself, and that was it. That was the end of it. Did they just accept his excuse? Did they just let it go? Nobody took any action on him. My mother justifies taking me there by telling me that her and my father made a decision that one of them would keep an eye on me at all times when I was at my grandmother's and step-grandfather's house. This was told to me as though I should think that she was very smart and caring. Perhaps I was expected to be grateful. She was really proud of herself for making that decision to keep her eyes on me when I was with my grandfather, the pedophile. She warned me, and it seemed as though she assured me that she had it under control, but I didn't feel assured, and I didn't feel safe whatsoever. Why does her declaration of watching me make it all right? Didn't they realize that he had started the child molesting grooming process right in front of them anyways? He was gaining my trust. I was his favorite. I thought he was nice to me. He gave me salted peanuts, and if my parents said no more peanuts, he would just sneak them to me with a big wink. I guess they weren't watching that closely after all, and the fact that he would sneak me them communicated to me that he was not being watched, and that he was not going to abide by my parents' wishes either. But I liked the peanuts. We only had them at Christmas time at the house. I always got to sit right beside him. I wanted that extra attention. I don't know why they allowed that. Why did they think that I was safe with the child molester? Because they were watching him? Did they think that since he had been caught once, that he would never do that again? I'm not sure if my mother was thinking that her watchful eye was all that was necessary. I'll never understand what she thought when I know now that he was just waiting for them to make one mistake, to leave me unattended just once, so that he could probably proceed. When I was in the fog, which means that when I was not understanding exactly why some of the details about these situations were wrong, but having this feeling or suspicion that they were wrong, I could never put all of these facts together, and therefore I was never able to see the real truth. It was in seeing this truth that I found my freedom from depressions, low self-esteem, and other struggles. I was able to emerge from broken and take my life back. My name is Morgan. At the time of this story, I was 14. I'm a girl who enjoys the nerdier side of life. This was my first experience playing Dungeons & Dragons with a few of my friends at a place called the Sci-Fi Factory. This is a public place, and to be honest, the place is worse for wear. There's holes in the plastic tables, gunk all over the floors, shitty outlets, and even shittier people. The people here range from decent to flat-out creepy. This is something that I learned the hard way. As I was setting up an elf rogue character, a man came over to my group. We'll call him Robbie. He told us that he was 24, talked to my friends. They seemed to know each other, so I was more than okay with letting him join us. He was white, had brown hair, busted glasses that made his eyes look bigger than they were. Nothing out of the ordinary for clothing. He introduced himself, and his age, then asked the same of me. I told him that I was Morgan, and that I was 14 years old. Robbie quickly showed his weirder side. Even if it wasn't the conversation piece, he'd complain about how much of a dumb bitch his girlfriend was, and tell her that he would come here just to avoid her. He didn't break up with her because she was his only source of income and shelter. He hated her. That was clear. He also bragged about the knife that he stole from Walmart. Even showed it to us. Hell, he let me hold it and taught me how to flip it in and out without hurting myself. Remember those glasses? Well, they were busted, broken up from a bar fight. That really unnerved me about this guy. He seemed so kind and friendly, but he was casually talking about assaulting people. Then he did what I never expected him to do. He got my attention, made me lean towards him so that I can see his Android phone still plugged into the wall to charge. He had a notes app opened, and it read, "Hey, I know this sounds pretty creepy, but oh God, this can't end well, I think. We should totally date." There was a whole paragraph more written, but I didn't need to see what he thought of me. He expected some sort of response, so I just gave him one. No. I'm not really interested in a relationship." "Oh, that's cool. Still want to be friends?" "Yeah, sure." What was I supposed to say? No to the guy that's been in a bar fight and has a knife on him? Neither of my two friends heard our conversation, so I was stuck next to Robbie for the next hour until our session was over. During that time, I offered him some gummy worms. They weren't my favorite thing in the world, but the Dollar Tree nearby has good prices. He laughed and said to me, "Food is the way to a man's heart. Are you trying to seduce me right now?" No. You can say that it's a joke, and it doesn't have any deeper meaning than that. But coming from the man 10 years older than me, who has just asked me out, I wasn't really laughing at it at all. When I left the store after the session had ended, I told my friends what had happened. They believed me and told me that he was some kind of a weird guy. I've been back at that store and ran into him only once. He was with a group of friends and a girl that I recognized. He kept on asking me to come over, and I insisted no. My friends who I was with already knew the story, and I was admittedly nervous. Even as we were leaving, he tried to get me to come over. But after that, I never saw him again. I later learned that it's because he was arrested for assault and vandalizing school property. Funny thing is, he doesn't even go to any school. So I'm a female. This happened when I was around 12. First, some backstory. I've had this neighbor that lived a street down from me. For a couple of months, he lived with his dad because he couldn't afford his own place. No problem, yet. Until he started staring, peeking, and looking into the windows of houses. The horrifying part is, no one knew why. Probably to look at naked women, but he has been caught many times. The police have been called on him multiple times, and he's been arrested a handful of times for smaller problems. Well, while this was going on, rumors spread that he was lurking around the neighborhood. So the parents became hesitant to let their kids play outside. One day I met him face to face. I was walking home from my grandparents' house. They lived a short walk distance away from my younger brother, who was 10. We walk and talk about how the day was going, while my mom drove home right before us. We didn't want to drive in the car. We just wanted to walk. So we're walking home. It was close to a 5-minute walk back to my house. Once we finally turned the corner to our small cul-de-sac, we see the man's car drive by. The whole neighborhood was on watch for him. I whispered to my brother, "That's..." He says, "No way, really?" Him being the smart, invincible 10-year-old that he was, yells, "Yo!" to this moving car with the windows down, not thinking that he was really hearing us. I gave him a stern smack on the head, told him to just keep walking. Meanwhile, the man turns his car around, starts to follow us. I finally notice in disbelief, and then scream, "Run!" And as we run to my mother's arms, she was waiting for us in the garage, not noticing what had happened. The man does a loop in his car in the cul-de-sac, and then leaves going the way that he came. He now knew where we lived. That night we all huddled nervously, thinking that he was lurking around the corner of the house. He never came, as we know of. 2 weeks later, he was arrested for showing his male parts to a woman in Walmart. He was arrested for a year and is now back in the neighborhood, selling drugs, things like that. Many rumors have spread that he lured many underage girls to his house, but no one knows if it is true or not. So that's where I sit today, wondering, always wondering what happened to him, and always looking over my shoulder.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.